Time to take another look at the Primaris Dune buggy. Let's see how the Invader ATV is shaping up in 9th edition. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. In today's video we're going to look over another Space Marine unit, the Primaris Invader ATV, kind of Games Workshop's updated Primaris version of the attack bike, replacing the slightly cute little sidecar for a Mario Kart style buggy with a pintle on it. In the video we'll have a talk over its datasheet, some advantages in various chapters, any obvious buffs and synergies for the vehicle, compare it to the attack bike in terms of damage and durability, and how I think about using it in game. So the Invader ATV is a fast attack choice for Codex Space Marines. It's 80 points per model, or 85 if you upgrade to the multi-melter. You can take between 1 and 3 in a squad, so you can have really quite a chunky unit if you want, and overall it's quite a tanky beast and really quite fast as well. It's got a 14-inch movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 5, a big 8 wounds, 4 attacks presumably for the 2 Primaris Marines mounted on it, leadership 7 and a 3+ save. The main 2 things it brings to the table is being very fast and relatively tanky for the points cost as well. 8 toughness 5 wounds are going to be a chore to chew through for most anti-infantry weapons. It means that anti-tank weapons are going to be the thing that this thing fears the most. In terms of war gear, it's armed with an Onslaught Gatling cannon, twin auto bolt rifle, frag and crack grenades and a bolt pistol. In its standard loadout it's really quite an anti-infantry beast, 8 shots at strength 5 and AP -1, plus 6 extra auto bolt rifle shots should do a decent job of cutting through enemy infantry. The other option is to upgrade for a multi-melter for 5 points. With the very good movement range, the 24 inches really isn't such a big deal. It should find it relatively easy to get line of sight and range on what it needs to, and maybe even get within half range for the 12-inch melter boost if it wants to. I personally think that the main gun options on the ATV are at least relatively well balanced. If you want more anti-infantry in your army, take the Onslaughts. If you want more anti-tank, then upgrade to the multi-melter. In general, out of the two, I might be a bit more inclined to go with the multi-melter myself. It just makes the ATV into a threat that can't really be ignored by anything, even the heaviest of vehicles. Otherwise, it has a few fairly predictable special rules, Angels of Death for shock assault, combat doctrines, and the lot. Turbo boost, meaning that you can move a massive great big 20 inches if you want to advance and lose your heavy firepower. Some chapters might be able to advance and shoot their heavy weapons, such as White Scars and Dark Angels. That could be an option if you need some excessive movement. They have the chance to explode for a mortal wound within 3 inches, and if you take them in the Dark Angels chapter, you do get Raven Wing, which gives them access to that useful Jinx special rule for a 5+ invul. Keywords wise, they are quite an interesting vehicle, not too similar to most other things. They are Primaris bikers, but they lack the core keyword, so unfortunately these ATVs aren't going to be getting any sort of rerolls from things like captains, lieutenants or anything else. It does make them a bit more of a standalone piece, as opposed to something that you'll be wanting to buff with characters like other similar units. Overall, the Invader ATV is a fairly meaty light vehicle, and as we'll see in a second, maybe a little bit tankier than the attack bike for the points, but not quite as much damage output. If we're looking to get a bit more out of the ATV, certainly most chapters can give some benefit to the thing. Ultramarines ones have the potential to fall back and shoot, even without using the stratagem. Could be handy enough, as it's not too unreasonable that this thing might get tagged. White Scars have a few bike synergies. Perhaps the most interesting option is a stratagem that allows them to advance and shoot, so your ATVs could be zipping around 20 inches across the table, shoot to full effect, and then even make a charge if they want to, because of course you're White Scars. Iron Hands can pick up some rerolls for their heavy weapons turn 1, and of course are a bit harder to shift due to their 6+ feel no pain. Raven Guard can get you light cover at greater than 18 inches away. Salamanders will certainly love their multi-melters, with +1 to the wound roll in the tactical doctrine, and re-rolling 1 failed wound roll each turn as well. Imperial Fists may be a little bit more synergy with the lighter weapons, ignoring cover could be good for the Gatling cannon, and of course their bolters will explode for more hits. Perhaps most of the melee chapters don't do enormous amounts for the ATV. I guess they do have the potential for 5 attacks on the charge in a pinch, but it's not really anywhere near as overwhelming as their shooting. Out of the more melee focused ones, maybe the Space Wolves might be quite interesting. If you have a librarian bounding up the board with other fast movers, you might be able to put them in cover or make them -1 to hit. Dark Angels, as with a lot of things, might be one of the strongest places to field ATVs. Their Jinx special rule will give them a 5+ invul innately, or if they stay still they get +1 to hit instead. They've got stratagems for a pre-game move, and their helpful turn 1 Raven Wing doctrine, which should get their firepower just where it needs to be. In theory you could also use Azrael as well for a 4+ invul save on these guys, though it would be a bit unfortunate that as they're not core you couldn't make use of his rerolls. Finally, Deathwatch do have some nice baked in rerolls against 1 battlefield roll. might be able to teleport, and could potentially get the squad a 5+ feel no pain with their psychic power. Otherwise, there aren't too many sources of making the ATVs better. Lack of the core keyword doesn't really help all that much. The Gatling cannon will certainly like turn 1 Devastator doctrine with its quite low AP, as will the auto bolt rifles in the tactical one. Chief Apothecaries used to be the Invader ATV's best friend, as previously they could resurrect these really meaty models from the dead. Games Workshop FAQ'd that away though, now they just grant their feel no pain type saves, and it could be potentially healing quite a lot of wounds of a model if you do have a Chief Apothecary. Otherwise, Librarians can get on with these guys quite well. Psychic powers don't usually need you to be a core unit, so even the base Librarian can give them a 5+ invul save from Psychic Fortress. Certainly might not be the worst idea if they do have multiple decent things to protect. Finally, for stratagems, for 1 command point you can access Transhuman Physiology. That could have some serious value on these guys, as they're one of the biggest and strongest units that you can use it on. And on top of that, as they're always 3 models or less, it's only ever going to cost you 1 CP. I think the main threat to these guys is usually going to be anti-tank weapons, so I feel like only being able to be wounded on 4s is going to come into play more often than not. Otherwise, if you do have a unit that gets tagged, 1 command point for falling back and shooting could well be worth it. It's quite nice to have that resiliency in a big unit, even if your opponent does reach your battle line. Otherwise, if you really needed them, you could think about things like Gene-wrought Might for extra damage in the fight phase, and if they do happen to advance and shoot with White Scars or Dark Angels, you could get them a -1 to hit as well for another CP. So I think perhaps the biggest question as to how they stack up competitively is comparing them to the already very good attack bike. These numbers are weighted for points for 100 points of each unit, and just compares the damage and durability of the ATVs versus attack bikes with multi-melters. I've chosen to take melter weapons with them on both loadouts. Basically, the ATVs are tougher but do a bit less damage. In terms of durability, the Invader ATV could take 56 bolt rifle hits per 100 points, where the attack bikes are only down to 40, or it's going to take 8.5 overcharged plasma hits to wipe 100 points of ATVs, compared with 6 for the attack bikes. When the Invader ATV also has access to Transhuman Physiology as well, it really looks like it just wins in that regard. On damage though, it's a bit of a different story. If you're taking aim at toughness 7 vehicles, the ATVs will typically do just over 4 wounds to them, while the attack bikes will do almost 6. The ATVs catch up a little bit at anti-horde due to having a few more bolt rifle shots, but they still lose out to the attack bike with only 2.5 Necron warriors versus 3 for the attack bikes. In general, attack bikes are just a bit more efficient damage wise, never mind the fact that they're a core unit as well, so depending on what else is in the army, could be amped up quite a bit with rerolls. Generally speaking, the ATVs are typically going to be around about 40% tougher, and that's even before you account for Transhuman Physiology if you use it. While the attack bikes are something like 35% more hitting, though they will get better with rerolls and things. Overall, it does seem that more people tend to take the attack bikes rather than the ATVs at the moment. Perhaps people tend to value the idea of keeping them safe with their speed first, and then they want them to be extra hard hitting when they jump out and deal damage. So how would I think about using the Invader ATV in game then? As I mentioned, I think that they're quite flexible in terms of loadout and squad size. I think both the Gatling cannon and the melter are fairly good value. It kind of depends on what you need more in the list. I have a slight preference for the melter myself. I think any squad size between 1 to 3 is also usable as well. If you're just taking 1, then they could be just a cheap expendable threat to try and ping on to far-flung objectives and hold them with their good durability. Or you could take a big meaty unit of 3 and try and make them significantly tougher with buffs like Librarians or Apothecaries. In game, I think they usually should be aiming to try and get the Alpha Strike on the opponent rather than the other way round. With their really good movement, they hopefully should be able to hide first turn or just outrange the opponent, and then jump forward and deal damage. Once they've done that, they might be one of the units that you might want your opponent to shoot rather than some of the others. With their fairly meaty profile, they're a bit better at taking damage than some Space Marine units, and I'd have a fairly low threshold for using Transhuman Physiology, particularly on bigger units of them. I'd also not discount their melee threat either. If you need to bully a unit of light infantry, they might be able to kill a few of them. They will usually have 5 attacks each on the charge, and they still might be able to fall back and shoot if you can spare a command point the next turn, if the enemy hasn't died. Overall, in terms of current strength, I'd say the ATVs are decently strong, though maybe not one of the strongest options in the entire Space Marine Codex. They do see occasional play in competitive lists, but they just don't seem to be as much of a staple as attack bikes these days. As I mentioned, it does seem that people just prefer the excess damage output, and perhaps the core keyword for the attack bikes. Stat line wise though, they really aren't all that far behind their firstborn cousins. If you're looking for unsupported squads that aren't going to be buffed with rerolls and things, I think the choice between ATV and attack bike is actually quite close. It's just whether you want a unit that's more durable or more hard hitting. So let me know what you think of these Primaris buggies then. Have you been using Invader ATVs at all in 9th edition? And if so, have they been performing well for you in game? I look forward to hearing all your thoughts as always down in the video comments. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep plenty of Space Marine videos coming, with new ones coming out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the content on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description below. Making all these videos does take a fair amount of time, and if you are enjoying regularly, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways, with the chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to check it out, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.